I had attended a dinner party recently, and I was engaged in conversation with another dinner guest, describing plans for my new business. When the other guest politely interrupted, looked at me, somewhat bleary-eyed, and asked, why on earth would anyone want to start a new business, especially in today's volatile economic climate, and more so at my age? So I pondered that for a moment, and while the purveyor of the question wasn't necessarily expecting a response, I offered one, because after all, at my age, I had one to give. And because it wasn't the first time that I had encountered someone who had questioned what it is I wanted to do at whatever age I happened to have been at the time. But let me go back to the beginning of my story. Now, long before I ever knew words like entrepreneurship, or marketing, or customer relationship management, or profit and loss, I was putting all of those into practice as an 8-year-old growing up on Chicago's far north side. Now, my early entrepreneurial endeavors included lemonade stands, used toy sales, sidewalk carnivals, and magic shows. And despite my aversion to attending birthday parties as a child, I often performed as Razzles the Clown, entertaining children at the very birthday parties I dreaded attending. Now, it was all of these early entrepreneurial endeavors that provided me with 3 valuable resources that most other kids my age simply didn't have: confidence, audacity, and money, my own money. Now, my first real job came at the age of 13, scooping ice cream, making banana splits and milkshakes at Susie's Ice Cream Parlor on Devon Avenue. At 14, I was selling fresh-cut flowers on a busy street corner on Sunday mornings, and like most American kids my age, I delivered newspapers after school on my bike. At 15, I was folding T-shirts at a shop that printed T-shirts. But I'm convinced to this day the only reason I got that job was because the owner was fed up scolding me for throwing rubber baseballs at his back door. Next, I got a job folding trousers at a men's clothing shop. And by my 17th birthday, I had had no fewer than a dozen different jobs, mostly in the retail sector. Turns out I was pretty good at selling things and folding things. At 18, I graduated from high school and moved to Phoenix, Arizona. And I took a job working for an insurance company. Now, it was around the same time that I had started taking my writing more seriously and had fashioned myself and my writing after my favorite writer, Franz Kafka, who, like me, was a fairly awkward young man from a middle-class Jewish family who had worked for an insurance company. Evenings, I delivered pizzas and played in a punk rock band. 2 things I'm pretty certain that Franz Kafka didn't do. About a year later, I moved to Los Angeles, seeking fame and fortune, and I formed what would become a pretty popular local band. Now, while living in Los Angeles and playing in a band in the 1980s was an amazing experience, playing alongside groups like Red Hot Chili Peppers was even more amazing. But I always had a steady job, always had a roof over my head, and always had food on the table. Now, during the 6 years I lived in Los Angeles, I had about 15 different jobs. For example, bank teller, 3 retail jobs, 2 warehouse jobs, a security job, and jobs as an accounts payable clerk, bicycle messenger, pizza delivery boy again, and aerobics instructor. Okay, but remember, this was Los Angeles in the 1980s and everybody was doing it. Now, truth is that I changed jobs quite frequently, and really because my interests changed quite frequently. And I always seemed to be running into interesting opportunities. But I always had a job, always worked hard, and always paid my bills on time. At 23, I decided to travel abroad for the first time, and this provoked one of the very first at your age moments in my life. Now, while my parents and friends were all supportive of my travel plans, it was actually my grandfather who harbored some doubts. And he remarked, "At your age, shouldn't you be in college or starting a career?" Well, I only planned on staying in Europe for 2 or 3 months, or until my money ran out, but ended up living in Spain for the better part of 2 years, earning a living, selling Levi's 501 jeans, and used electric guitars that my mom would ship over from Chicago. But that was the life of a wandering minstrel. Now, I returned home at 25 and enrolled at the theater school at DePaul University in Chicago. A college freshman at my age. There, I earned my bachelor's degree in playwriting. Now, I know what you're thinking, that a degree writing plays for the theater probably wasn't the smartest career move, but that degree did allow me the privilege of staying on at university, where 2 years later, I earned the somewhat more respectable degree of Master of Arts in English and History, which was a degree that actually led to my first teaching job, and one that's probably the most memorable, as it was at the very high school where I had graduated from 9 years earlier. That's me in 1992 at Stephen T. Mather High School, where I became Mr. Morris, the teacher, for the very first time, as opposed to 9 years earlier when it was, "Mr. Morris, why are you late for class again? Mr. Morris, where's your homework?" Yeah, that happened. But that was just the first of many stepping stones in the field of education that 25 years later have brought me here today to this institution, capping a teaching career which has provided me with a quarter century worth of satisfying, respectable work, unparalleled experiences, and a level of income which has provided me the opportunity to seek out lots of new adventures. For example, at the age of 30, I self-published my first book, a collection of poetry based on the life of my great-grandfather, an Eastern European immigrant who came to the United States in 1923. Now, having gotten married 5 years earlier, my Spanish wife and I decided to relocate to Valencia, Spain. And 5 months after my 34th birthday, the first of our 2 children was born. Now, if there was one failure in my life, it was the failure of my first marriage after 13 years. But that failure also created opportunities. Opportunities for personal and spiritual growth, and an opportunity to rethink, reevaluate, and reinvent myself and start over, even at my age. At 40, I decided I was ready for yet another change, ready to seek out new frontiers. And when I informed the director of the school where I had been teaching at the time that I wouldn't be coming back in September, that I decided to open my own school, well, she politely interrupted, looked at me, somewhat bleary-eyed, and said, "Start your own school at your age?" So I opened a small English language school in my neighborhood in Valencia. I hired 2 teachers, signed up about 50 students, and got the school up and running. Now, about the same time, I started up another small business based on my lifelong love for bicycles. So I went out, bought a dozen bikes, and these aluminum frame trailers that attached to the backs of the bikes, where inside hung a double-sided billboard, and I launched Valencia's first bicycle advertising agency. And while I had the bikes and the resources, I also started up a full-service bicycle messenger and delivery service. Now, by the end of my first year, I had a team of 10 cyclists riding my bikes all over the beautiful city of Valencia, Spain, delivering printing jobs, newspapers, groceries, prepared meals, all while promoting my clients, which ranged from supermarkets and shops, the city zoo, and Valencia's renowned City of Arts and Sciences. Now, at least once a week, I rode an advertising bike, I ran messenger routes, delivered organic groceries, and taught English classes, all while being the primary caregiver to my 2 young children, which meant preparing lunches every day, picking them up from school, taking them to swimming lessons, violin and piano classes, and play dates. Now, in 2008, I observed a sharp decline in business, and this was around the time of Spain's economic downturn. Now, it was at the same time that I had reconnected with a former colleague who I'd worked with in a school in Valencia. Now, she was Dutch, and like me had married a Spaniard, and like me got divorced around the same time I did. So she had moved back to Spain after having lived abroad for a couple of years. She called me up one day and said she'd be traveling down to Valencia, and she thought it would be nice to see me and my kids, who she had known since they were babies. So we met up, enjoyed a splendid afternoon, a picnic lunch, played with the kids, and reminisced. And I suppose you could say the rest is history. At the beginning of the following year, we moved to Liverpool, England, together. And in December of that year, the first of our daughters was born. So, at the age of 46, I became a father for the 3rd time at my age. The 2 years that we spent in Liverpool, I taught Spanish at a local primary school and was the Liverpool correspondent for a well-read local cultural newspaper that was based in London, always looking for new and exciting opportunities. 2 years later, we moved to the Netherlands. And after having had a couple of part-time teaching jobs, I was asked if I could teach a couple days a week here at Hotelschool The Hague during the first 10-week block of the new school year. Turns out they were short an English teacher. So naturally, I obliged. I enjoyed the experience immensely. And at the end of that autumn block, they had informed me that they hadn't found a new teacher yet, and would I mind staying on for another 10 weeks? Now, if my calculations are right, that was 4 years, 3 months, and 9 days ago. And here I am, signed on for another 10 weeks. Now, but that wasn't the only gig I'd have in Spain. In the Netherlands, I founded the Hague International Singer-Songwriter Festival in 2012, which ran successfully for 2 consecutive years, and not so successfully after that. It happens. But it was amazing. The festival featured 300 singer-songwriters from 40 different countries and was held in 35 venues in 7 Dutch cities. And to this day, one of the most incredible experiences of my entire life. Then, about a year ago, I had an idea, and one that would inevitably change the course of my life. And it was something related to not teaching, not writing, not singing, not entertaining, but to bow ties. Now, I had first started wearing bow ties in 1993. Oh, well, okay, so maybe it was a couple years before that. I had taken a job at a children's hospital in Chicago. I was teaching in the day school of the Department of Child Psychiatry, where, as you can imagine, wearing long neckties would be considered both a hazard and a nuisance. So I went out and I bought my first bow tie. This one. But it wasn't so much my love for bow ties that inspired me to actually start making them. It was a story about shoes and a famous actor that did. Now, having always wanted to make things with my hands and never expressing any real natural ability to do that, I remembered reading an interview with the British-Irish actor Sir Daniel Day-Lewis. Now, you might know the story. Like me, Daniel Day-Lewis enjoyed making things with his hands, and one day he approached the late Italian master shoemaker Stefano Bamer and asked him if he would teach him how to make shoes. So Daniel Day-Lewis moved his family to Italy, and he apprenticed under one of the greatest master craftsmen of the day. So I figured if Daniel Day-Lewis could learn how to make shoes in Italy, I could certainly learn how to make bow ties here in Holland. So a year ago, I began a new journey, seeking out new horizons. I designed a collection of 6 bow ties that were made in a small workshop in the south of England. I'm now working on my second collection, which will be handmade right here in Holland. Some with these very hands, as I'm now learning how to pattern, cut, and sew. Now, if you've never worn or tied a bow tie before, I can imagine that the idea might seem a bit daunting. But like anything new and untried or untied, you know, it's not always about the result. That's the most important thing. It's about the trying, the tying. It's about the doing, the taking of risks, the failing, the succeeding, the learning, and the dreaming. It's in all of those where life happens. So be brave. Sing a song, write a poem, eat some ice cream, fold some trousers, tie a bow tie, do whatever it is you have to do. And do it on your own terms, in your own time. And remember, never stop dreaming. Because take it from me, dreams really can come true. Even at my age. Even at your age. Thank you very much.